Hello everyone and welcome to another video here on the channel, and as always I'm joined by Mr. Gregor himself, Ewan Wilson. And Ewan, today we're going to be talking about something that happened at La Vuelta a España, not today, but we saw the three-time defending champion Primoz Roglic crash out in the final moments on stage 16. And following this, today we've had a press release from Jumbo Visma. And Ewan, what's the story here?
So the story here is that a number of days after this crash, Jumbo Visma released what is a sort of joint interview piece with both Primoz Roglic, the rider who was affected mainly by this crash, and CEO of Jumbo Visma, the team, Richard Plugge. In this piece, Primoz Roglic outlines how he feels about the crash, which from the beginning of this piece, Roglic seems to be critical of another rider's behavior, which is Wright. He is named within the first paragraph of this piece when Roglic says that this crash was not okay. Quote, "This shouldn't happen. People move on swiftly as if nothing happened. For me, that doesn't apply. This is not the way I want the sport to continue, and I want to make that clear." This is all in response to the crash, which he believes was caused by Wright. At the end of stage 16, when both of them seemed to bump into each other in the final 100 meters of that stage, after Roglic was clearly showing very, very good legs, but that crash was hard enough to knock Roglic out of the race. The rest of this piece does explore rider behavior, and Richard Plugge, the CEO of Jumbo Visma, goes forward into thinking that we should take harsher measures on rider behavior, and there should be more accountability to individuals for their behavior, in particular Wright. He goes on to say at the end of this piece that he is very glad that Primoz is speaking out in naming the behavior of riders as well, namely Wright in this situation. Wright, we don't know what his response has been yet. This was published during a stage of the Vuelta a España. There was a tweet put out by Jumbo Visma, but that tweet was subsequently deleted given its negative reception. But the article in the press release remains online in what is an interesting PR move by Jumbo Visma. So there's plenty to digest in this, all about Roglic, about this crash, about Wright, and also about rider behavior.
Yeah, well, Ewan, I think the first point to tackle is who's at fault here with the whole incident with the Vuelta a España finish here. Primoz Roglic, or was it Wright, or was it a racing incident, as many people say?
Well, firstly, let's recount what happened. We're in the final sort of 200 meters of this Vuelta stage. There's a small group up in front. We have a reduced sprint. Roglic is at the back of this group. He tries to move up out of his line. Wright similarly wants to try to go for the win and moves up out of the wheel. They're all in one big string of riders, so obviously they want to try to sprint round for positions to try to get the best finishing position possible. Once Roglic comes around, Wright also leaves his line at the same time, which leads them both to bump. That's quite a good sort of narrative, and a photographer captured quite a neat narrative of what happens, and you can see that they both sort of release from the line and happen to be in the same place at the same time. They bump into each other. Roglic bears the brunt, and he is the rider that comes down instead of Wright. Wright, after the stage, spoke about it very openly with the world's press, saying that it wasn't intentional. He didn't really know what happened to Primoz. He just noticed that he went down. It seemed to be a bump of shoulders, and I think that seems to be what it is. However, Primoz is adamant that this was reckless riding by Wright. Roglic's account of the crash states that Wright's elbow seems to lock him out of his handlebars, meaning that he drops down and evidently crashes. To address the racing incident question that you mentioned, I think there's a very fine line between racing incident and intentional misbehavior. A racing incident, I mean, it happens a lot. Sometimes we have someone just bump into someone at the end of a stage, and all of a sudden that causes a big crash. Maybe someone breaks a little bit too heavy into a corner, and then that causes a crash with the person behind. Lots of these things happen in professional cycling. It's part and parcel with the sport. They're riding at a very, very fast pace, and they only have a bike really to support them. There's not much else in it. And I mean, the stakes if you crash are very, very high, which is unfortunate with this sport. Intentional misbehavior, I think, is it's different. It's being sort of aware of the rules and thinking you can bend them. We've seen this in the past with many reckless sprints, in particular with certain Nacer Bouhanni. I don't want to punch him down at this point because it's not really a topic surrounding him, but we've seen reckless behavior before, and that has been outlined. I think the UCI commissaires have taken action for it, but what Richard Plugge is saying is that we should have more accountability to riders. At one point, he even drew comparisons between this incident and that of Dylan Groenewegen and Fabio Jakobsen a couple of years back at the Tour of Poland, which I think is maybe a step too far. It's an interesting take to have, but Scott, do you think this is a racing incident, or do you think this was Wright intentionally trying to maximize his own chances by compromising those of other people's safety?
Well, it's hard, isn't it? Because I don't think Fred Wright was doing anything maliciously. And I just think it's one of those things that happens sometimes in racing. And yeah, I don't know. But it's like with the team managers, we heard it as well with Fabio Jakobsen. He wanted prison time for Dylan Groenewegen. Here we have a team manager going after another rider who was involved in the crash of their star asset. So yeah, I don't know how to feel about this. We've had conversations in the past about every time one of these big stars crashes, then suddenly they want to do everything. But cycling is quite a hectic sport. Crashes happen all the time. But I don't think Fred Wright was doing anything maliciously here.
I also agree. I think this is a race incident. I don't think this was done with malintent. Should a rider like Fred Wright, who does, you would say, he is the number one sort of culprit in this incident, although we've outlined that we don't really think he is, should he be sanctioned for this? Which is what Richard Plugge is saying, is that we should take more action to keep riders more accountable and to improve rider behavior in the peloton. He has said that he's mapped out on a database the cause of professional crashes in the peloton. And the number one cause is rider error and rider behavior, which, I mean, it's a broad term. It's a broad term in terms of, he mentions not braking, for instance, as one of these sort of causes that fit under that category. But I don't quite know if this fits into this whole theory that he has and this plan that he has suggested, which includes appointing more professional experts to the UCI to try to improve race behavior. Is he expecting Fred Wright to be punished here in terms of, oh, well, you have to pay 350 Swiss francs at the end of the stage? Is he suggesting he goes on a rider safety course, or he gets a telling off at the end of the stage? UCI come up to him and like, well, Fred, well, maybe you just need to stay in your line a little bit longer and just not try to go for the win like everybody else is. It's hard. I think it's a really hard problem, but cycling has had these problems forever. I think this is just part and parcel with this sport. It's going to be very, very hard to overcome this.
Yeah, I think danger of opening the floodgates as well, if that becomes the new norm. But Ewan, if it wasn't Fred Wright, who's somewhat still new to everyone's knowledge, or however his performances, he's still finding his feet on the world tour very well, but it's not a Tadej Pogačar, it's not a Remco Evenepoel. If it was Remco Evenepoel who caused that crash, do you think it would have been this much, well, would there be this much wind in this story, and would he be out throwing his weight about if it was a bigger rider?
I don't know, because I mean, the general consensus was after this crash on stage 16, which was a number of days ago, by the way, that, oh, it's just these kind of things happen in the end of the race. Maybe Roglic, he dug super, super deep, by the way. He was he was burying so deep. At that point, we've seen it with Caleb Ewan at the Giro when he was climbing up to Visegrad. You start to sort of get lightheaded. You're throwing everything on the line and you want that victory. You want the seconds in Roglic's case. And maybe your judgment is just lapsed a little bit because you are right on the edge. Roglic was towing this group for 2 kilometers from that big attack he made. He was going at crazy watts and really, really digging deep. And yes, he crashed hard. That is his Vuelta done. He really wanted that fourth. Maybe he's angry about that. And I'm sure Richard Plugge and the rest of Jumbo Visma are, because he's been their number one plan and Roglic has been through so many crashes. Even I think the title of this piece was "One Crash Too Many" for Roglic. He's clearly frustrated about it, but I don't think the consensus was that someone was to blame necessarily on the day of the crash. I think we're almost creating a story, or we're not, but the PR team is almost creating a narrative where someone is at fault and at blame. I think it's more just, it's an accident. I don't think you can really shift blame in either field. I wouldn't say it's Roglic's fault. I wouldn't say it's Fred Wright's fault. They were both racing incidents. Plugge has a point. We should improve this, but I don't think that this is the right platform to speak on that.
Yeah, it's definitely very interesting, and we'll see what happens with the piece, if there's any comment from Fred Wright and Bahrain Victorious, or even UCI. So that's basically it for this video. Make sure to let us know down below what you think of this incident. Was it Fred Wright completely at fault, or was it basically a racing incident, and should there be something taken further from this? and make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we